Okay, good.
All right, so let me start first by asking Governor, speaking of Richard Irvin, Mayor Irvin last night said you won the Republican primary. What's your response to that?
Well, I think he's a sore loser. The truth is that the messages that I was sending out were messages about the general election and what we stand for and what the Republicans stand for, making sure that people know that there's a big difference between people like us who are getting things done for working families and people like the Republicans who are extremist and off the mark. You know, when you're talking about corruption and then, you know, claiming other people are corrupt and then turns out you're involved in corruption, that's something people should know. And, you know, certainly the DGA was saying that what I think is true, and here we are on the day after the election. Guess what? Darren Bailey is too extremist for Illinois.
Well, that brings me to my next question, and that is that between you and the Democratic Governors Association, you spent combined about $30 million on ads against Irvin, presumably because you thought you could more easily beat his opponents. Now you're facing Darren Bailey. Can you beat Bailey without spending that kind of money? Do you think you can beat Bailey? Because right now things are very tenuous, not only in the state but across the country. Ideologies seem to be shifting.
Well, the Republicans nominated the most right-wing extremist, Trumpy, MAGA Republican that they could nominate, and that's Darren Bailey. And that's so out of step with the people of Illinois and what they believe in. And so we'll be pointing that out throughout the general election, certainly, and of course pointing to the record that we've established of standing up for working families, of saving lives during the pandemic, of raising wages for people, lowering taxes for people, making sure that we're lifting up all the people, and not just working families, but those who've been left out and left behind.
Let me ask either one of you. I mean, you know, he is very far right, but he won handily. He won handily in the primary, which in a primary is not always that shocking, but nevertheless, what do you think the most important message will be moving forward? I know you mentioned it, but and will it be as expensive as this primary was?
Well, I think one of the key messages is that Darren Bailey, first of all, is anti-choice. He is someone that does not even want an exception for rape or incest as it relates to abortion rights. And clearly, with Governor Pritzker's leadership, we have enshrined reproductive freedom into state law here in Illinois. We are an island, and that is a key motivating factor for so many who believe, as we do, that reproductive freedoms and just bodily autonomy should be something that is afforded to all Illinoisans, to all Americans, quite frankly. He, secondly, is someone who is supported by Donald Trump. He has been endorsed by Donald Trump, and we know what he has brought to the ticket and what he has done and his bigoted, hate-filled positions. And he's someone that also doesn't love the entire state of Illinois, as the governor has talked about, needing somebody who can represent all of Illinois. When you say that Chicago is a hellhole, then you are disparaging a key economic engine of our state. And so what we're going to be focused on, as the governor has said, we're going to continue telling the story and telling the narrative of who this person is. Darren Bailey is too extreme for Illinois.
Is it going to be as expensive, though, Governor, do you think, a race as the primary? And do you think Bailey will be able to raise significant cash going forward?
I don't know. We're going to make sure that we get our message out. I believe that the message sells itself. So I'm excited to make sure that people really understand the differences between the two of us. I've been highlighting those for some time, and I'm going to continue to do that.
They're pretty obvious differences.
I agree.
Are you concerned at all?
Of course. I mean, we're running for re-election. You've got to fight to the end. We've got to make sure that, we're working like we're behind all the time. But I do believe and know that the people of Illinois don't stand on the extreme where Darren Bailey stands. And so I feel very good about what we've done to lift people up and the message that we'll be able to carry to people about standing up for them.
Your speech last night sounded very presidential in tone to some. Are you considering a run for president?
You know, I'm running for re-election as governor of Illinois because I love the job that I have, because I think there's much more that we can do, and I intend to serve the next 4 years as governor.
I am interested in the Trump factor. I realize that Trump lost in this state in 2020 quite handily, but nevertheless, his endorsed candidate won the primary. I mean, are you concerned that there might be a shift in attitudes and that his endorsement might actually fuel or light a fire under the Republican?
I think it's the Republican Party that's moving further to the extremes. The MAGA Republicans have taken over the Republican Party. Traditional Republicans in this state don't stand with them. I believe that we're going to see Republicans supporting Democrats this time because the Republicans have just gone off the rails. Donald Trump's endorsement is bad for general election votes because, once again, you pointed it out, in 2020, Donald Trump lost by 17 points in the state, and he lost by 16 points in 2016. People in Illinois don't stand with Donald Trump.
And you feel that that hasn't changed at all in the last 2 years?
You know that the things that he's saying are not where the most people are in our state. It works in a Republican primary, apparently, but it does not work with the vast majority of the people of our state. Look at the votes last night, right? We got almost twice as many votes just in an relatively uncontested primary as Darren Bailey got in his primary, even though he got 57%. What does that tell you? And there are a whole bunch of people who don't vote in primaries who are going to vote in the general election. So I feel good about our prospects, but we're going to work like heck to make sure that people know where we stand.
You just touched on something I wanted to ask you. I sometimes wonder if it can come down to turnout in the general election. You know, it's about who turns out and who those voters are. Do you think turnout will be a key factor in the outcome in November, or do you think a general election is so vastly different from a primary that turnout won't matter? You know what I'm trying to say?
Turnout always matters. And there are three things that I think will drive turnout in the general election. One is the accomplishments that Juliana and I have had over the last 4 years, lifting up families across the state. Second is the abortion ruling that occurred just a week ago, which took away rights for the first time in half a century. In fact, for the first time that I can ever remember, that rights were taken away from people. That's never happened. We always are expanding rights in the United States, not contracting them. That is motivating people. You saw people come out in the streets almost immediately protesting about that ruling. And then the third is Donald Trump's endorsement of the Republican primary winner. People don't like Donald Trump, and they don't want Donald Trump's politics running the state of Illinois. So those three things are going to have an enormous effect on turnout in a very positive way for Democrats.
How do you see your campaign, if at all, using Darren Bailey's comment, which you brought up, Chicago is a hellhole, against him? Can we expect to see that prominently in ads?
That isn't the only thing that Darren Bailey has done against Chicago. He also wanted Chicago to become a separate state, literally to hive it off and make it a separate state from the rest of Illinois. Separating people from one another, dividing people, that's not what we're about in Illinois. This is the land of Lincoln. This is the home state of Barack Obama. We're proud in Illinois to be one state and one Illinois. That's what our campaign is about. That's what this state is really all about. And our opponent on the Republican side only wants to divide people.
And just going back to the money factor, it was a very, very expensive primary all the way around. Do you think the general election will be more expensive? And do you expect to spend many millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars again, trying to defeat Darren Bailey?
I certainly haven't made any decisions about, how we're going to get our messages out or, what might be spent. What I can tell you is we're going to make sure that people know what we stand for and make sure people know what the opposition stands for, how extremist they really are, and how we are really standing up for people across the state.
And to those who are still criticizing you and your administration for the way, something Darren Bailey constantly talked about, for the way you handled the pandemic, right or wrong, how are you going to handle that criticism, which I'm sure he will he will bring up throughout the next few months.
Just another example of Darren Bailey, the extremist, who really doesn't understand what happened during the pandemic. This is a guy who didn't want people to get vaccinated, didn't want people to wear masks. He didn't want any mitigations.
He sued you.
And he sued over that. And by the way, he lost every single case except the one that got him out of the mitigations, him personally. That's the only case that he won. This is a guy who, if we had followed his advice through the pandemic, thousands more people would have died in Illinois. Instead, we have one of the best vaccination rates in the Midwest. We have the best rates of keeping people safe from going to the hospital, and we have a low mortality rate compared to the rest of the Midwest. We did well in the state of Illinois, and it's because of the mitigations we put in place. Again, following Darren Bailey would have been a deadly road to go down.
Do you want to add anything to that, Lieutenant Governor?
No.
Okay.
He said it exactly the way that I was thinking it.
I have one more question. It's not directly related to the campaign, but in the last few months, we've heard Boeing, Caterpillar, now Citadel, are all leaving the state of Illinois. Are you concerned about, these major companies leaving? I know some are coming, but are you concerned about that? Do you feel that that's an indictment on your administration at all?
Look, I'm fighting for every job in this state to make sure that we're bringing jobs, creating jobs, new companies coming to the state. As you know, Kellogg's just announced they're moving a $10 billion headquarters to the state of Illinois. Lion Electric came and built a factory. They're building electric vehicles here. We've attracted hundreds of jobs from Boeing and hundreds more jobs from Caterpillar, even as they moved office personnel out of the state, more factory jobs coming to the state of Illinois. And I work every day to grow our economy. I can tell you that just as the population of the state has grown, yes, you lose some people, you gain some people, you look at the net of that, and we're gaining population during my term in office. We also are gaining jobs during my term in office. So I don't like to lose any companies from the state or headquarters, but what I want is more jobs and more opportunity for our people.
I say every time I interview you, I could just keep sitting and talking to you, but I'll stop.
Well, there's a lot to talk about. I have questions for you, too.
All right, go. Lay it on me. What do you got? I can handle it.
It's good to see you.
You too.